Hello, everybody. We are live. Welcome to the inaugural show of Lighten Up with Sunny Wilkinson. Um, I cannot wait to introduce my first guest. But before we do, I want to just say a few words and let you know that this whole idea has been inspired by my fellow musicians who have worked in this format and interviewed so many wonderful musicians worldwide, particularly Kathy Siegel, who has just interviewed her 100th guest, if you can imagine. I wanted to highlight some of our world-class musicians in Michigan, at least to start off, because we have amazing musicians. And you may know this about me or not, but my favorite shows always are when you have a little bit of jazz and you have a little bit of folk and you might have a classical violin. So in this show, I wanted to feature and promote musicians and artists from all different walks, cross genre. So that's the idea of the show. And before we get started with Miss Beautiful Siusan, I want to say a few thank yous, particularly to Smokin' Sled Dog Records. I know, great name, right? I mean, hello. Jamie Sue Seal, our goddess of song and protects us all like we're her children and her loved ones. Of course, Susan O'Rourke and Tina Clan, who runs Smoking Sled Dog Records, were co-producing this idea. And didn't they do a spectacular job with the promo? And also, I just have to say, give a shout out to all of you artists and makers and changers and beauty givers. And I want to say, don't lose heart. You know, what we do really does make a difference. And the world needs our beauty right now. It really does. Don't cry already. And we need each other. So keep creating, my beauties. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce the remarkable, funny, smartest girl in the room, always. She's a singer, songwriter, instrumentalist, activist, teacher, producer. People, the critics have described her as a rare, deep, rich alto. Hello, like honey on velvet. She connects with her audience, both musical and through her stories that are sorrowful, whimsical, and funny. So may I introduce you to the marvelous goddess, Susan O'Rourke.
Hi, Sunny.
Hi, darling.
If I had known I was going to get that kind of an intro, I would have dressed better.
I know, right? I would have worn my special earrings here.
Exactly. Goddess thing. You have to dress up for goddess. That's a big one.
Yeah, well, I think you are. I think you're billowy.
Well, thank you. I'm really happy to be here. I'm like so excited that you have me here as your first guest.
I know, isn't it cool? I'm thrilled.
And I'm just going to say, I promise I won't break you. So you'll have a second guest.
I love that. Oh, by the way, if you are tuning in, please, please leave comments because, let's see, there they are. There's the comment page because I can see them if I pull this up. Oh, look, there you are. There's Jamie Sue and my beautiful Shiante Dixon. Please say hello. That way we know that you are visiting us. I may not be able to look at them all, but I will do my best to make some comments. If you have any questions of Susan, let us know, and I will really try to pull them to the front.
Okay.
All right,
there you go. You comments on my end, just so you know.
You can see them as well?
No, I don't.
Well, I have the Facebook page up, so hopefully it's going to work in a smooth fashion.
Okay. Right.
So I think before we get into any nitty gritty, I got to know what food is your favorite new discovery during the period of cloistering?
Oh my gosh, what a question. It's like, how they talk about people going into college and that freshman 10?
Yeah.
like the pandemic is like the pandemic 35 or something, isn't it? It's like everybody's just like comforting themselves by eating. I don't have a new favorite find. I've just like reintroduced myself to my old favorites, like, hi, lasagna, remember me? You know, that kind of thing. But I've been like the last, I want to say 3 weeks, I've been seriously trying to curtail my intake, my caloric intake, and change my eating patterns back to something healthy, because I do believe eventually we are going to have to put real clothes on and go outside again. And I have to be prepared for that. So.
I know. Oh, that's great. I love that. Yeah. My husband is making lasagna in a couple days, so
My favorite.
I'm pretty thrilled. Let's see here. Somebody's trying to say something. Oh, look, there's Bill Warren from North Carolina and Peggy Ostrom and Roy Anthony. Oh my God, Susan, Roy Anthony was my band teacher when I was a freshman in high school at Lucerna in East Whittier. How about that?
Way to go, Roy.
Oh, look at that. They all say hello and are sending you their love. Okay, shall we jump in?
Sure. I'm ready.
So I noticed and read that you are from Brooklyn.
I am.
Yeah, I thought it might be fun for the people to know about your journey from Brooklyn to Saginaw.
Well, Brooklyn, you know, I've been in Michigan now since high school. So Michigan is as much my home as Brooklyn is. But Brooklyn is always like, if people ask me, where are you from? I always reply Brooklyn. It's like almost part of your DNA, I think, for some reason. But I can remember when I moved here in high school, it was like you dropped me from a different planet.
Yeah.
Into Michigan. It was a very different thing to happen to somebody at that age. And I loved Michigan when I came, but it was very disruptive to me. Like my personality, it seemed very disruptive. And even today, like if I go out into areas, and the people that know me will attest to this, like if I go out into areas for a long time and we're driving for a long period of time and I don't see a little bit of a concrete curve, I get edgy. I'm thinking, what happens if we break down, if my cell phone dies, if we don't have enough snacks in the glove compartment? You know, I'm thinking long term all the time. I'm always thinking I'm in the wilderness, even if I'm in, like, I don't know, Kansas.
You kind of are.
You just drive forever and you don't see something, and that makes me edgy. But I carry that kind of with me. But I go back to New York about once, sometimes twice a year, and visit family. We play out east, it seems like, at least once a year. So I get that opportunity to go back. And as soon as I cross that bridge, I feel like I never left. It's the funniest thing.
I love that. Heart home.
It is definitely my heart home. Like when people think about retiring, my dream would be to have a little apartment in not even an upscale neighborhood in Brooklyn, but just to have that Brooklyn back in my life, because Brooklyn's like a little town, you know. It seems like a big city to most people, but really Brooklyn is just a lot of 4-block radiuses that incorporate everything. It usually has your church, your grocery store, your dry cleaner. Everything is in a 4-block walking distance. And you know your neighbors there because everybody is out walking, and we meet people in the hallway and we meet people in the elevator, and it's a very hands-on culture compared to Michigan, whereas we walk out of our house, we get in our car, and we drive to our destination. So it's actually, to me, more of a smaller town feel living in Brooklyn than living in Saginaw, Michigan.
Do you know what's funny is, you know, I lived in LA for 15 years, and LA is a sprawling behemoth megalopolis, but there are neighborhoods.
Right.
And when I finally bought my house in a Thai neighborhood, and you had your Thai grocery store, you had the Thai pharmacy, you had 12 choices of pad Thai noodles, and it was a really nice community that I lived in.
Yeah.
So even down to karaoke, right? Crazy. So, my love, did you start playing at a young age?
I did. I started playing when I was really little. I have, I was blessed. I came up in a family that were both visual artists and musical artists. So, and they appreciated all art forms. So I wasn't like thrown into like one genre or one specific art medium. But my mom painted, and her sister was a great painter. They spent a lot of time painting. We lived in a little 4-room apartment over a drugstore. That's how I grew up.
Wow.
And they spent a lot of time painting in the kitchen. So you wanted to paint with Mom and Aunt Joan. And my family, almost all of them played music. My uncle played music. My grandfather was a great player. So we all grew up listening to music. It was what you did. Like when we gathered, they'd play music, So as a kid, I think it was not that, it's not like today. Today children get into music because their parents think they're going to be on The Voice or they're going to be the next big hit. When we got into music, we just got into music because it was kind of in the DNA and it was expected of us. And frankly, we wanted to be able to sit at the table and play. We wanted to be able to play with the big boys, and keep up. And that was the fun of it. So it wasn't really about becoming great musicians. It was really just incorporating music or painting or art or anything like that in your life as a normal part of living.
Don't you think that's such a beautiful, organic way to learn? You're really kind of an apprentice. You're being enfolded by the family, and you just are, we all play. We didn't play together so much, but we all sat around the piano and sang 4-part harmony.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly right.
And
I think when you learn, we own a music conservatory, and we see a lot of parents bring their children in for lessons. And part of the pieces that are missing to the equation is that those little students, our youngest students, they get a lesson and they learn it in the little room and they take it home and they practice it in the little room. And then they come back next week and then they say, look, I did the lesson and now you get a new lesson. And they never get that experience of being part of the community, because music and art is 75% of playing music and giving art to others is being part of that community. So they never get that experience of sitting down with their mom and their dad or their uncle or their grandfather and playing a song or learning a song that they learned when they were kids. And they don't have that feeling of, oh, this is just part of who I am and this is part of what we should be doing. It's always like music is supposed to be given to the kids that are the most talented, instead of music is really supposed to be something that we're all sharing at a table. It's like a buffet. We should all be eating it.
I agree. We should all be. And here's the funny thing. People are sometimes hesitant to sing in front of me. My favorite thing is when I hear an untrained voice sing happy birthday, or somebody's whistling down the street or singing attitude. I love that. It's my favorite thing.
I'm sure, but what? I gotta back them up. I'm still hesitant singing in front of you.
Please.
I think I'd want to come and sing in front of Sonny Wilkinson with a totally untrained voice. I'd be a little edgy.
Oh. Pshaw. So I have to tell you, I have had such a ball delving into your music. And I was wondering if we could just jump into your CDs and the concepts behind them and maybe play one of the tunes. And
absolutely.
Why don't you tell us? Well, first of all, let me blow your horn. Her latest record, which is called Chance the Arm. What the heck does that mean? Chance the Arm.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Sonny. Well, there were two families that were feuding in Ireland, and one of them was held up inside a cathedral. And this is a true story. And in the cathedral, there was a giant wooden door. And the other family was out in the courtyard, and they were tired of fighting. So they were hollering at this other family that was locked in the chapel, thinking if we come out, we're going to be killed, or whatever. And he was like hollering, come out, come out. And the family on the inside decided all they were going to do was they were going to open up a hole in the door, and one of them was going to stick their arm through. And if their arm came back, then they would know that they're honestly talking peace, and then they would come out. And that's what he did. And that's how that term came, chance the arm, because he chanced losing his arm and risked that. They have that door. It's called the Door of Reconciliation, and it still hangs in that church. They have it mounted like a museum piece. And I wish I could remember the name of the church, but it's a true story. But as kids, when I grew up, like if we were going to try something a little risky, we used that term all the time. We're like, okay, I'll chance the arm, you know, without understanding really the true story behind that term. But that's what it is. So, but every time I release a CD, I feel like I'm chancing the arm. So
yes, absolutely. My dear friend in LA said, okay, Sonny, every time you release a CD, you should take a big risk, like a big leap, and do something you really can't do. And I thought, okay, but I have, right? And if I have done that, because I thought, well, what a marvelous thing, like really push yourself. I'm not sure I'm going to do that again, but chancing the arm. You, it was, I'm not sure by whom, but it was named Celtic Album of the Year. And it's you and Zig and your musicians are 3-time Irish Music Award nominees. Oh, this would be you and Zig as top duo, right? I love that. So tell us about Chance the Arm.
Well, the album to me is very ballad heavy. It's probably longer, in my opinion, than it probably should have been. But Chance the Arm happened after I have been sick. And I'm always thinking every time I do a project, I probably add more into it than I probably need to, only because I'm always thinking, am I going to be able to get back into the studio? Am I going to be able to invest the time to do this? So it's probably a little bit longer than I expected, but it has some wonderful pieces in it. It has some really astounding traditional ballads that are very, very old that I tried to, as an artist, as an Irish artist, I try to really research some of these pieces that I'm drawn to. And I really try to incorporate the oldest translations of the songs that I can find. And then I might add some modern twists. I might do some rewording of my own. We certainly do our own arrangements of them. Very few of the traditional Irish ballads are played traditionally when Zig and I are playing. We're not traditional players by any sense of the word, but I always feel we're traditional musicians because our foundation is tradition, and we build on that. And if you don't have musicians doing that, frankly speaking, a lot of those ballads and songs do get lost, and they aren't brought to audiences that might not have an ear for that kind of music. I always find it astounding when we go to Irish festivals and we're playing a festival, and you'll see one band after another get on a stage, and you might hear the same song 4 times on one stage in a day. And the song might be 300 years old. And I'm always thinking to myself, that is a successful song. I mean, do you think the Beatles had it? I mean, really, how many of us will ever be able to say we wrote a song that 5 bands are going to cover in a festival on the same stage on the same day 300 years from now? And I think why are we drawn to that? And I think because when those songs were written, they weren't focused on things that are contemporary and fleeting. They're focused on the big things that connect us generationally and culturally, regardless of who we are and how we grew up. And that is love, life, death, unrequited love. Those connect us no matter where we are and how we grew up. And almost all of the Irish songs, if you listen to them, that's the foundation of them. There's very few that are just kind of flirty and, devil may care kind of stories. other than a lot of the Tin Pan Alley stuff is a little more tongue-in-cheek and upbeat and stuff like that. But the majority of the traditional ballads that I'm really drawn to are about life, love, unrequited love, and death.
Oh, that's beautiful. When you say 300 years, in our jazz literature, our standards are 100 years. Well, wait a minute, not quite, but almost, a lot of them. And they will hopefully certainly stand the test of time, but 300 years, imagine.
300 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of, and even some of the phrases that are used, I find, they repeat. There's always a tendency to see references to the Trinity or the number three, or there's always a trio somehow. The phrases that bring on real visual images, like when the oceans burn, or flying across the ocean, or always stones. These are recurring themes that happen in all of these songs from 400 years back all the way up to today as they're being written. And when I write, because I write not just for Americana Roots audiences, I also try to write for my Irish audiences. I try to incorporate some of the phrasing that will just automatically set you back to that tradition. So no matter what the song or how I'm presenting it, there are always those key elements that tend to draw people back, say, oh, this is Irish. That's what this is Irish. And I mean, the Irish have been influential in a lot of different genres, and they brought those images lyrically into a lot of our music. Listen to a lot of the bluegrass, and listen to a lot of the verbiage, and look at the lyric of those songs, and you will see Ireland in that.
I love that. And I also see in your writing, you may be talking about specific images, but what I see in your writing is deep metaphor and really clear, like visual pictures that just splash across the page. And it sounds like maybe you've been influenced by this deep love of the word from the Irish. Well, you're Irish, so what the heck?
You know what? When I speak, I think, like when I'm having a conversation with somebody, I try to be clear and coherent most of the time, Sunny. But I don't like to dress things up. If I'm going to say, hey, that's a great meal, I mean, I can be a little fancy about it, but sometimes we get so caught up in being creative with a lyric that we lose the sense of the moment and the emotion of what you're trying to portray. So in my writing, I have always tried to be as clear and concise and still be interesting as I possibly can. In both my Irish and in my Americana roots, I find I do that. And I think it's because, when I grew up, I listened to a lot of people that wrote like that or presented music like that. And I was fortunate, like I said, to grow up in a family that nurtured us musically, but not just in one genre, in all genres. The people that really played music in my family were not my Irish relatives. My Irish relatives, there were very few of them that I remember playing music at the time. And they weren't the best musicians, but they were very enthusiastic people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So my English side of my family, my mom's side, were the actual musicians. And they played a lot of stuff. They played, a lot of the contemporary music. They played, my uncle was in a doo-wop band that I never saw at the time, but I know that he was in one. My grandfather was a great player. My uncle was a great player. They listened to a lot of the stuff that was coming out in the 60s, which was really old traditional music that was being churned back out as folk music. So a lot of the lyric in our folk music that I grew up listening to was actually traditional music. Yeah. We sat and we watched the Clancy Brothers and Tommy Makem come on TV wearing crew neck sweaters, singing Irish songs on television. Where, I mean, that never happened before. No one was interested in Irish music, to hear
Yeah.
people sing it on TV. But because of that folk music culture, all of those doors opened up, and that all that music became accessible to a broader audience and a broader population. And then there was an upsurge, I think, in the interest in Irish music again, certainly in this country, and what it meant to the people who were just first generation Americans or second generation Americans like myself, how close we were still to that immigration moment, and how much that music meant to a lot of our family. And it was just an amazing time. It was an amazing time to grow up. So I got to experience that, but also my grandfather listened to a lot of jazz. He used to have one of those fabulous reel-to-reels on his apartment wall, you know, the reel-to-reel tape, and he'd pull out, what are we going to listen to today? I'd go up and see him on Sundays, and we would, he'd sit with me and teach me ukulele at the time because I was too little to hold the guitar. And we would play music and, you know, Ain't She Sweet, songs like that. And then he'd pop on a reel and we could be listening to Flat and Scruggs, or we could be listening to Nina Simone. And it was that broad. And it was a wonderful experience because you grew up loving it, just loving music. And my mom too, my mom listened to, like, my mom had every album you can think of, but she also had a lot of the old musicals. She had Oklahoma and Gigi, and she had Trinity Lopez. And I mean, she had a broad view of music. So we were listening to a lot of things. So it was like growing up loving ice cream and not just one flavor. So.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It was kind of like that in my family as well. We listened to Mahler and Beethoven, and we listened to South Pacific and West Side Story, and we listened to Duke Ellington, and
Right.
it was lovely. That's so great. May we play one of your songs?
Sure.
Let me just
Absolutely.
set this up here. All right, so I got to tell the people out here, this song, we can't listen to all of it. We're just going to play a little snippet of it. But when I heard it the first time, the tears were rolling down my cheeks. And may I give my interpretation of the song and then you?
Absolutely.
It's called A Proper Sort of Gardener. And to me, it's about kindness and generosity. And it tells a story of a young child going and picking flowers, and the gardener being so generous because he knows that this little girl is going to take him home to her mommy. And then, I just feel like we need that kind of kindness and generosity right now, a proper sort of gardener. And then it goes on. And do you want to tell them about it?
Well, proper sort of garden, and as you probably are aware of after listening to more than 2 or 3 of my songs, a lot of my songs have always, I think, some kind of a spiritual underlying message, even the ones that I'm drawn to that I have not written myself. And proper sort of gardener is really how children view the world. Like when you're looking at something and you're going, ooh, why did that person do that? That's not right. You know, when you're 6 years old, you're saying, that's not right. But big people are telling you that's right. As I think it's kind of that mixed message. I grew up raised Catholic. My father's side of the family were Catholic. My mom was a heathen by all standards because she was a non-practicing Presbyterian Protestant. So, you know, it was kind of a weird religious upbringing. But in Catholicism, there are like all of these rules, like they tell you things about, you know, original sin. And when you're sitting in class, you're thinking, that doesn't sound right. Not the God that I being taught about. Why would they put original sin on a tiny little baby? Like the child's mind knows what's right more than what the adults are trying to tell you. And I think proper sort of garden is very much like that, because the story goes that she grows up on this land, and the gardener that actually owns the neighbor's land is willing to give the flowers, but yet in the story of Adam and Eve, God throws his children out of the Garden of Eden for picking an apple. And the reference always goes back to, I hope that God is as good of a gardener as my neighbor was. It's that kind of a feeling. So always questioning, you know, is the Almighty really powerful and wrathful, or is he just embracing and kind and loving? And it's a beautiful song. It's actually an autobiographical song by Maggie Holland. She wrote that about where she grew up. And she was born in Scotland. She was raised in England. And Mr. I can't remember his name. That's awful, but I've drawn a blank on the name of the gardener. His garden actually is where the Bass Ale Company now stands.
Oh,
so their property was bought by the Bass Ale Company, and that's in the song as well. It doesn't talk about the company, but it says how it is now concrete and there are no more flowers or butterflies. But it's I think it's an amazing song. It's probably she's probably one of my more favored contemporary writers in a Celtic genre, a modern Celtic genre.
Well, and I didn't take that much depth, but I did take the inhumanity as it got more and more, the garden, the tenders of the garden lost their humanity and their kindness and their generosity. And anyway, we're going to play a little bit of it. This is a proper sort of gardener.
Yeah. By the fire, my dogs tell me stories. One of them concerned a garden too, where the lions and the lambs lay down together, and every lovely fruit and flower grew. The gardener sent his children in to play there, rejoicing in the brightness of the days. But as they went exploring and took a fruit to taste, he cursed them both and sent them on their way. Even then I realized in my childish mind, he was not a proper gardener of the Mr. Harding kind.
Whoops, sorry, I was going to try and fade that out in a cool way. So much for my production skills. Lovely. He was not a proper gardener in the Mr.
Proper sort of gardener.
Like the Mr. Harding kind. Oh, love it.
It's a beautiful song.
I have to let the people know about a quote you have on your first record, which is Immigrant Heart, released in 2008. And I just love this quote. Listen to this, folks. In celebration of almost 100 years now in this country, we dedicate the CD to my family and all the generations of other immigrant families who continue to take blind steps in faith. Isn't that lovely? Yeah, beautiful.
Immigration is beautiful, and it is exactly that to me. All forms of immigration. That's a funny quote, and that CD, Immigrant Heart, when the CD was done and the graphics were done, and for some reason, and I can't remember why, I looked at something and I realized that in 3 days, it was going to be the exact anniversary, 100 years that my grandmother came through Ellis Island with her sister.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my gosh, I have to write a song for this. And what I did was I wrote Immigrant Heart. It was that very day I wrote the song. And the next day I went and I said to Zig, I said, look, I wrote the song. We have to record it and we have to put it on this CD that's done, you know? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm sure you can learn it, you know? And we did it. We recorded, ran through it 3 times. We recorded it, and that's the recording that's on that CD. I mean, we literally recorded it the next day after I wrote it because I wanted it on there. I just had not realized that there was an anniversary of that sort coming up for me. But immigration, I mean, when I went to Ireland, I went to the home that my grandmother was born in. And she lived in a little famine cottage. just south of Castle Bar, 7 miles north of Castle Bar, in a tiny little town called what is the name of the town? This is awful, but I can't remember it. I have COVID brain. Right. Blaming everything
Not
on
alone.
COVID. But it's not a town, is really the truth of it. Oh, Gort, G-O-R-T. But it's not a town. It's actually just a couple of cottages. That's it. There's no post office. There's no church in the actual town. So anyway, I wanted to go and I wanted to find the house that she was born in. We were playing there. And my cousin, my father's first cousin, Thomas, was still living in the house as it was built, if you can imagine that.
Wow.
He had just put in electricity in a bathroom.
Wow.
Like 20 years before. And he gets all of his water from an artesian well outside the house. It's level with the ground. And it's one room with a hearth at the end, and now a tiny little room on the end of that, which is the bathroom. And there was a loft above one end of the room where people would sleep. And I asked him, I said, how did people sleep? Because there were 9 children that were born and raised in that house.
Wow.
And he said they used to put a blanket up in the middle of the room to stop the fumes and the smoke from the sod, from the fire, to, you know, affect you while you're sleeping. That's how they slept in that cabin.
Amazing.
A tiny little 2-track dirt road that led to nowhere, Sonny, absolutely nowhere. And I was humbled almost to the point of tears when I walked in that room, because I can remember as a child, you know, talking to my grandmother and asking her, you know, tell me about Ireland. And she wouldn't really want to talk about it. She was broken, I think, from the whole immigration experience. You know, when she immigrated, when she walked out of that place and down that 2-track, I don't even know how long she walked before she got someplace where they would take her to a ship, and got on a ship and came to the United States. You didn't go back. You didn't go back and see your family. That wasn't part of the equation. You knew you were leaving. It wasn't like today. And I tell this to my audiences every time we speak about immigration. Today, we know where we're going. We know what it looks like. We can Google map it. We can see the neighborhood. We can see what our neighbors are driving before we buy a house we're looking at from satellite. That, you know, we can Google where we're going. And instead, when people did these giant immigrations, they were just walking out and putting themselves in the hand of God and destiny and feeling they're heading for something better. They're certainly heading for something better. Or just on the word of a relative that had been there ahead of them, saying, come to America or come to wherever. It's nice here. And off they would go, like birds jumping out of the nest and praying that there's grass underneath it, you know, but you don't know. It could be concrete, you know. So immigration to me is just like that. There's steps in blind faith. Today, immigration is much different because we're motivated more, I think, contemporarily because of political reasons and things that are happening in our countries. Although Ireland, the mass exodus was driven politically. I mean, people were leaving their country because they could not live in Ireland anymore, which is the saddest part of it. And we don't always think about that. We think of just a happy little Irish family coming to America and, you know, setting up shop, but it wasn't like that. They were political refugees, just like all other political refugees coming to this country. So when people come here, they're coming usually not because they want to leave their country and their family, but because they're desperate. They're desperate. And they're taking a huge chance when they come. It's a massive undertaking. When I moved here from Brooklyn, and I shake my head and I laugh at this, and I think, wow, that's kind of an immigration, sort of, oddly it is, because emotionally it's similar. You're leaving everything that you love and know and hoping that you're making the right choice. And once you're planted here, your life is going to take a very different direction than if you had chosen to stay. Those are the big things. Not is the weather going to be nice? Am I going to like my house? But is my future going to be where God really intended me to be? Is that my purpose? Was that my purpose to grow up in Michigan and be here with you today? Was that my purpose? And that is all part of the voyage of every voyage that all of us take, whether it's from Ireland to the United States or Mexico to the United States or from Traverse City, Michigan to Wisconsin. It doesn't matter. Those voyages are all important because they put us in the circle of where we're supposed to be and who we're supposed to be with and who we're supposed to connect with. Without that, our lives would have been very different.
Isn't that true? They would have been vastly different.
Vastly different.
One single choice could have led us down a completely different path.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's fascinating. And I love that your life and your music and what you pursue sort of pull from all of these deep, deep themes and heart, like soul strings, man. This is beautiful.
Thank you.
Before we go on and talk about the next soulfully deep subject, tell me about, of course, our dear, sweet, multi-talented, crazy multi-instrumentalist husband, Zig, and the rest of your bands, your crazy bands.
Well, Zig is crazy, and he is absolutely, he's totally multi-instrumentalist. I've never met anybody quite like him. You know, I wrote a song, and I can't remember the name of it. We write a lot of songs. I don't always sing them in public. Just because you write it doesn't mean you should actually sing it. But one of the lyrics in this song was, I love a man who thinks and lives in note and rhyme. And that's really Zig. He thinks.
Say that one more time. Say that one more time.
He thinks and lives in note and rhyme.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and that's really the truth of it. Zig is absolutely, he cannot sit a moment without hearing something in his head or wanting to exude a melody or a rhythm or something. It is like breathing to him. And he said he started out as a drummer and then went on to play every instrument with a string. When he was younger, he played with a lot of bands. You know, he was the pickup guy. If you needed a bass player, you'd call Zig. If you needed a lead guitarist, you'd call Zig. If you needed a drummer, you'd call Zig. If you needed whatever you needed, you would call Zig. And he would sit in that night. And that was the day when live music was everywhere and always. It wasn't, you know, there weren't any DJs. There was no karaoke. It was live bands. And it was the same thing when you're in high school. All the dances, they were just live bands, kids playing music. It was no, we're gonna spin records thing. So he was working all the time from the time he was a young teenager playing music. And I met Zig in the studio. I wanted to do a short recording of some music that I had played in my 20s and 30s with another woman. And we had no recordings of anything that we had played other than with people yelling in the background in a bar situation. Yeah. And I was like, you know, we should record some of this music so we've got it, just so we've got it. And he was running a recording studio in our area. And that's how I met Zig, was in the recording studio.
And was that in Saginaw? Where was that?
It was close to Saginaw. It's Thomas Township, which is very close.
Yeah.
And that's how we met.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, by the way, folks, their website is Siusan, spelled the Irish way, Siusan, and Zig, ZIG.com. Mm-hmm. So you're going to want to go there and check them out. Yeah, that's wonderful. And that sort of leads me to your White Crow Conservatory. They have a remarkable facility in Saginaw. Tell us about your teaching and your conservatory and performance space.
Well, the White Crow, Zig has been teaching his entire life. And we had a recording studio out in Thomas Township and outgrew its space. And we were looking for a building to move the studio to, the recording studio. We were hoping for just a place where there'd be a nice space for recording, maybe a place for teaching out of, because Zig had always taught, and possibly if there was a place in the corner for someone to play guitar or something. You know, we were thinking small change kind of stuff. And then our realtor was actually a retired minister. And he called us one day and he said, hey, there's a church for sale like 3 blocks from your house. Are you interested in buying a church? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And we went over there, we brought instruments over there and we set up inside to see what the sound was like inside. And we signed the next day. We were excited. It was like meant to be. But the Crow is all encompassing. We teach out of there. We have multiple teachers that teach out of there. COVID has changed everything because right now we're doing the majority of our students online. We have a retail store where we sell instruments. We have a beautiful recording studio. And the real cream of it for me is the live music venue. It seats approximately 120. And when we first bought the Crow, we felt bad taking a church out of the neighborhood. It was first built by the Mormons, actually by the family that lived across the street from me, were the elders of the Mormon church that built the Crow, believe it or not.
How about that?
It was built by the Mormons, and then it was, I think, first Reformist, and then it was Christian Science is who we bought it from. And they only had 7 members left when we bought the building from them. But we still felt bad taking a church out of the community. And so what we did was we put an ad in Craigslist saying if anybody needs space for church on Sunday, we offered it for free. And we did that for a while. Then we had like 3 or 4 congregations that wanted to rotate using it on Sundays. We called it the God Buffet. So every Sunday you could show up at a certain time and get some kind of religious service. We didn't guarantee what it was going to be, but you'd get one. And that rotated. And that way people who needed a place to hold their worship had a place, and people that were looking for a place to be their spiritual home had a way to kind of shop for that. And we didn't charge any rent or anything for them because we just felt strongly, especially for congregations just starting, that whatever money they're getting shouldn't be going to rent and snowplows and heat. It should be going to other things when you're developing a congregation. So we did that for about, I want to say 3 or 4 years. And then somebody came and said, hey, I want the place to myself on Sundays. We want to rent it on Sunday. And then we started renting it to congregations on Sunday. So the Crow does many things. I mean, we have weddings there and we have graduation parties there. We've had both of my parents, we've had their memorials and funerals out of there. We've done other memorials for people. We do a lot of things out of the Crow. There's a Tai Chi group that meets there on Saturdays that have been with us now for 10 years. And it's a really wonderful place to be. You know, it has a wonderful feeling to it when you walk into the building. So.
It does. I will attest to that. Ronnie and I did a concert in your beautiful performing space. It's gorgeous. You could tell, you know, the vibe that you all have created there is just, it's like the center of the community. That I didn't know that about the churches or the Tai Chi and stuff. That's fabulous. I mean, who does that? You guys do that. I think that's remarkable.
I'm sure there's other people that do that as well and think along those lines. I'm always amazed when I see a church go up that I know cost $40 billion, you know, these giant churches, you know, that go off and, you know, have these massive congregations. I'm always amazed at the amount of money that has to come in to support just the building, you know?
Yeah, right.
My battery, believe it or not, is dying on my phone. I want to plug it in. Can I run and grab it?
Right, and I'll tell them the story while you're running and grabbing it.
Okay, great. I'll be right back.
Along the lines of what Siusan is talking about, which I just love, my brother, I come from 6 generations of Methodist ministers. My brother, David, was the last of us, last of the ministers. That legacy did not continue. His last church was in Phoenix, Arizona. In Tucson, Arizona, high up on a hill. And one of the first things he did was he opened, I can't remember what you call it, reconciling community, where you openly accept gays and lesbians, etc., and the LGBT community, which it wasn't that back then, 35, 40 years ago, it was not then. So that was the first thing he did. Then the second thing he did was he had a Jewish synagogue come in and use his building. And then when all the stuff happened with Arab Spring and it's got kind of crazy, he had an imam come in and share the building. So here they were in Tucson, Arizona, with three of the world's great religions sharing the space. Now, how about that? Talk about ecumenical. That was great. How you
Hang on
doing?
one second.
Are you ready, darling?
Almost. It yanked it right out.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it yanked it out because it's too short. You know, technology just isn't what it used to be.
You can't live with it. You can't live without it.
You know what I find intriguing? I was talking to somebody. I'm having my kitchen painted. You know this, right?
Yes, it looks great.
But I was telling the young guy who's painting my kitchen, I really crave the day when my phone used to just be nailed to the wall. You know, it didn't like fabulous stuff that we.
Do you crave the day when you would pick it up and you could hear the neighbor's conversation? Do you crave that?
I was telling him about that. He's looking at me like I'm kind of speaking Greek. I'm like, no, really, we heard other people talking. It was amazing.
And you'd speak to Lily Tom. I go, it's the operator.
Operator.
Okay, I dialed.
Okay, you can see me, right? Can you see me? Okay.
All right, love. So you are back, beautiful. I
Thank
would
you.
love for you to talk about being a cancer survivor and the Cancer Stinks Roadshow. And so I can play you this beautiful song.
Okay, well, we had bought the Crow in like 2005, September 2005. And we had a lot of plans, you know, for the Crow. There was a lot of work that had to be done inside. We did a lot of painting. We did a lot of electrical. We were doing some construction. And we had some gigs booked, I want to say, out east and a couple of places like that. And it was the day after St. Patrick's Day. It was a Monday. And I went in for my mammogram. And they told me right there, this looks really bad. They said, we're going to give you the name of a surgeon and you're going to go from here to there. And they handed me this manila envelope and they gave me the address and off I went. And it was like a roller coaster. I can't even explain to you. I mean, I've lived a pretty healthy life by all standards. You know, I've never suffered any serious illnesses, long-term illnesses, major injuries other than broken toes, things like that. So to hear the words that I might have cancer was like stunning to me. And I went to the surgeon and she looked at it. She said, I'm going to do a biopsy, but I'm going to tell you, it doesn't look good. Go on down to social services tomorrow and I'm going to give you a slip to bring and tell them to sign you up right away. And they did. Wow. I was in social services on Tuesday. They had me signed up for Medicaid by Tuesday night. On Thursday, I was in having a lumpectomy done. And when they did the lumpectomy, they had said they didn't think they had gotten it all. They felt that it had invaded the vasculatory system. So then we were faced with the decision, am I going to just have one breast removed? Or am I going to do a double mastectomy and then chemo? And my son was only 3 at the time. And I had real fear. You know, my fear was not, I don't think, based in, I'm afraid to pass from this. My fear was, I'm going to pass and my son is not going to know who I was. My girls might be able to remember me, but I didn't think that my son was going to be old enough to remember me. So when I went through that, it was life-changing. So we opted for a double mastectomy because I didn't want to risk having it come back, because they said if it comes back, that's going to be how it happens. And I thought it's not worth it to keep them. So I opted for that, and I blessedly was sent to the path of the correct oncologist, who Dr. Belcueva, who had said that I qualified for a blind study. Never do I qualify for anything, mind you, but chemo blind studies I qualify for. But the cool thing was they could either give me standard chemo or the most aggressive chemo that they had. And I got the most aggressive chemo. And then I had to follow it up 5 years of tamoxifen after to try to maintain it. And it's been going well. It's been a long journey. Like the first 5 years after that surgery and the chemo has really just been about coming back up to speed. That's really the truth. I mean, there are a lot of things I haven't been able to do since then, I think because of the surgeries and the tamoxifen, but my energy levels took a long time to come back, a lot longer than I thought. I figured I was just going to be rebounding from the surgeries, but I had 7 surgeries the first year, and that took a lot out of me.
7 surgeries. Oh my God.
7 surgeries the first year. Yep. And then what happened was, it's kind of odd because we had to cancel all of our touring and all of our gigs and kind of stay at home and be with the Crow while all these things were happening at the Crow and we were doing the remodeling. Now we are there, which kind of made us actually, I think, better owners and better keepers of the Crow. And the first year of music, the very first people that played there was Denise Stein and Maggie Ferguson. And they played in April of 2006. And they were our very first concert that we had. And I had just really survived the surgery. And then in the fall, I want to say of 2007, maybe it was, or 2008, it's kind of a blur when that happened. But Jamie Sue came in because she was representing an artist who was booked at the Crow. Huh. And she wrapped her arms around me and made things happen for me. Because at that point in my life, I had kind of resigned myself that I wasn't going to be playing music anymore. I didn't have the drive in me to do it. It was hard for me to just get through 2 songs, let alone think about, oh my gosh, I could never play a whole set again, or let alone 2 sets, you know? I mean, it was just like overwhelming, just too overwhelming to think about. And she just kind of took over and said, no, we're going to do this and I'm going to book you and you're going to do it. Here I am.
I did not realize this. That's
yeah, absolutely.
And then the fact that you turned this really tragedy, and you've got to talk about where am I? Oh, you've got to talk about the Cancer Stinks Roadshow, how you have brought humor into this, which is obviously a saving grace for anybody that has these life-threatening things. Yeah. And then I have to play your beautiful song too. So tell us about the Cancer Stinks Roadshow.
Yeah, the Cancer Stinks Roadshow came after that song. My friends were kind of after me about writing a song, getting back to singing and writing music. And I was having a hard time just wrapping my mind around it. And they really wanted me to write a song about cancer, which I had a hard time doing because I don't like to write about, I like to write topically, but I don't like to write about a topic that's just specific. Like I wouldn't want to write about a song that's just about cancer. So one morning I was just sitting out in my kitchen. It was a Sunday morning. And I know I've heard artists say this and I think, oh, what a trite thing to say. But the truth is the song came to me. I mean, it was written in 15 minutes, that song. It just laid it down and it was there. And it's not a song about cancer. It's a song about when anything happens that changes the ground you're standing on. When you wake up tomorrow and it's not anything that you expected it was going to be, it's totally different than today. And people going through cancer, whether it's breast cancer or lung cancer, or they have a heart attack, or they're losing their home, or they've lost their job, pain is pain. And those massive changes in our life are really what Another Day is about. It's not just about cancer. So when I wrote that song, I originally offered it as a single. And it's not a great recording. I mean, I just wrote it and I recorded it quickly. My voice was weak, I was weak on the guitar. And I listened to the recording even today and I think I should re-record that song and do a good job of it. And then I think, no, I shouldn't. I should let it stand the way it was. And that song has gone out and, wait a minute, I gotta turn that off. Didn't mean to touch your forehead. Um, that song has gone out on a single and raised money for hospice. It's gone out and raised money for different cancer organizations. It goes out and it's been included on compilation CDs to raise money for different kinds of cancer. It has been included on compilations for homeless. It's been on compilations to raise money for hunger, all those things. So it's like if I could pick one song that came through me, that'd probably be the song that I would have to keep if I could only pick one.
We're going to play, I wish we could play the whole thing. We're going to play part of it. It's a really remarkable song. It's called Another Day. I'm playing it from the beginning because I just think that beginning is lovely.
Scale of 10, it was a 9. The storm blew in without a sign, sent to break me and make me weak. I could not stand, nor could I speak. And as I passed, silence fell. It seemed I'd woken up in hell. Shock and mercy fill the day. The storm is past, the wreckage stays, and I breathe in, I breathe out. The sun comes up and the sun goes down. Pray to God to ease the fear. Another day, another year.
Oh man, Susan, I honestly wish you wouldn't have said anything about the weakness of your voice. It's just beautiful. And
Thank
there's
you.
a fragility in it that's transparent. It clearly works on me, man. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, look at us, Miss Susan O'Rourke.
Yeah.
My friend Kathy on the West Coast does 2 hours, and I said, oh man, I could never do 2 hours. But look, we've filled an edifying, joy-filled, interesting, you're amazing, lady.
No, I appreciate you so much, Sunny. And I want to tell you, you were part of the Smoke and Sled Dog Records roster, and I'm always amazed. I mean, I've been with Jamie Siusan on that roster for I want to say almost 15 years now. I think I'm coming up to our anniversary.
Yeah.
And I am always so astounded by the other artists that are on this roster. I always think, gosh, I'm not worthy to be on that roster with these other artists. And I can remember the first time I had the opportunity to see you and Ron live. I was totally blown away. And, we have some other folks on our roster that are just amazing, amazing people. And it's not just that they're great artists and musically talented, but they just all exude this personality on stage, which I find amazing. Like Jamie Sue is drawn to that kind of artist that connects with audiences and is able to portray music in a different level. And I think that is really, if I have to define my goal, that is my goal, is to not be the best artist on a roster or the most accomplished musician or the finest voice to ever step up to a microphone, but to be able to send a message and to deliver an emotion in a song and to be respectful of songs that I'm covering that I didn't write and know what that message should be and what that emotion should be that I should be giving them.
That is what a perfect and beautiful way for us to say goodbye to our listening audience. That was gorgeous. And I'm going to say a few words. Would you, once I pull us off Facebook Live, would you stay with me a few minutes so I can give you a big hug.
Okay.
What a joy. Susan O'Rourke, thank you. Wow. You know, I knew this about you, but I did not know the extent. This has been a delight for me to talk to you.
Thank you.
If we were standing, everybody, big applause. So you know, our next show of Lighten Up with Sunny Wilkinson. Don't you just love that title? Jamie Sue came up with that. And don't you love the promo? Susan and Jamie Sue did the promo. Just fantastic. Our next show is going to be on August 24th. And just so you all know, we are changing the time so that we don't conflict with another show that airs on the West Coast. That's out of deference to my dear friend. We are going to be featuring Ellen Rowe, a remarkable jazz pianist, writer, arranger, educator, former director of jazz studies at the University of Michigan, and a long time friend, and also very much associated with Smoke and Sled Dog Records. Thank you for being with us. Keep your joy, keep safe, and we'll see you next time. Mwah!
Bye.